Recently caught wife cheating. I've been with my wife for 10 years. Married for 3. We have 3 daughters. She's a stay-at-home mom and I work full-time. She's going back to school next week to finish her drafting degree. I'm 30 and she's 33. We own our house and have a good marriage. We do have a lot of financial issues with one income. We've never had problems with infidelity before. About 9 days ago, the night of the 10th, we were in bed and she asked me if we could talk. She asked me about bringing others into the bedroom. We've talked about it before, but she decided it's something she really wanted to try. I'm open to experiment and told her we could, if it's the right person and the right time. She then brought up my close friend we can call Jake. Jake has an open relationship with his wife and talks openly about group sex. It took me a little off guard because me and him have been close friends for 15 plus years. We played in a band together in college. I told her that him being so close to us might be complicated, but she persisted that it could be okay. We dirty talked a bit about fooling around with another girl and then had sex. She got in the shower right after and I had some feeling she had been talking to Jake about a threesome without coming to me. So I looked in her phone. I know it's an invasion of privacy, but we don't lock our phones and have never had a closed-off policy about it. I noticed she had a muted conversation with Jake. There was a lot of missing bits to the convo. So I thought all that was strange. We then went to bed. After she fell asleep, I checked again to try to dispel my paranoia. I was going to tell her the next day. I went through her phone and apologize. But then I found a deleted conversation she had not cleared from the deleted folder. I restored it and found about 60 messages between her and Jake. Texts from the 8th. They started by talking about him and his wife's relationship. She then asked him if he ever thought about sleeping with her. He said yes. She said she had as well. They talked about how they were both aroused. Flirted about touching each other. It escalated to talking about meeting up and having sex. It was fairly graphic. I have screenshots of much of the convo I sent from her phone to mine. He was much more aggressive than she was, but she did reciprocate and dirty talk back. They ended it by talking about her coming over the next day to hang out and smoke some weed. The times are while I was at work and the girls were at school. Text from the 9th. She asks Jake what time she should come over after she drops RHE girls off at school and I go to work. He texts back and says whenever. She texts again after getting to his house about 30 minutes later to let him know she's there. Later that night she texts him that they need to never talk about it again and he needs to keep it to himself. She says she feels terrible for what happened and he assures her it's okay and that they can keep it a secret. She says it was just about wanting to adventure sexually, but she went too far. The next night, the 10th, is when I find them. I wake her up and confront her about it. She breaks down and admits to everything. While at his house, they talked for a little while about what group sex is like. They kissed and he took off her shorts and underwear off and went down on her. He then took his pants off and she touched him. She bent over but began to cry. They stopped and held her for a little bit and they got dressed. So after all this I ask her how she can do this and she cries and says she's sorry. And that she made a mistake. And was going to tell me everything the next day. I left and stayed at my friend's for a few days and her mother drove 4 hours to stay with her and help with the kids. I came back 3 days ago after her mom had to leave. She says that it happened because she had a very high libido after a long period of low libido because of her medication and the lack of autonomy from raising kids at home for years. That she was just very sexually curious about involving other partners, and it led to receiving attention from another person. So, I want to forgive her and move on. I still love her and my family. I want to keep what we've had. We plan to do therapy. I want to ask anyone who's been in a similar situation what they have done to forgive. And what each of us could do. I want to trust her again. Story 2. Found out my GF of 5 years has been sleeping with my friend from high school. But I feel nothing. Am I broken? I, 34M, had been dating my GF, 31F, Ashley, for 5 years. We met back in 2018. I remember the day vividly. I was coming home from work as a traffic controller when I came up behind a car that was sitting at a green light. I of course was tired and irritated from work, so I honked my horn and yelled for the driver to move. The driver waved their hands out her window. I got out of my truck to see what was going on. The driver, Ashley, was in tears saying that her car ran out of gas and didn't know where the nearest gas station was located. Since I lived nearby, I knew the nearest gas station was nearly 2 miles away. I offered to help her, and she happily accepted. I pushed her car off to the side of the road to prevent any accidents. Since she didn't have a fuel canister, I drove her to the nearest gas station and filled the gas canister I had stored in my work truck. After putting gas in her car and helping her get to the gas station to finish fueling up her car, we exchanged phone numbers. After that day, Ashley and I started calling and texting each other. We connected and got along so well, which led us to eventually dating. My parents loved her, and her parents loved me. We loved the same anime music and even the same taste in cars. We rented a small apartment together and lived together ever since. Every Saturday night, we would change into our favorite PJs and watch some Bleach, My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, or One Piece. That was our anime night. I loved her so much that I was planning on proposing to her. Last year my friend from high school, Tony, moved back to town after he divorced his wife. The first night he came back, we decided to crack open a few beers, reconnect after not seeing each other for 15 years. I told him to stay the night, since he was too drunk to drive. A week after that night, Ashley seemed different and not like her usual self. Instead of having anime night, sex became less passionate and seemed more like a chore for her. She even stopped saying "I love you" before I left for work in the morning. Tony even stopped talking to me, even though we were good friends. It seemed strange, but I didn't think too much of it. That is until last week. The job site had to be shut down early for the day due to heavy rain. When I got home, I saw Tony's car parked out front. I thought Tony was waiting for me to get home, so we could hang out. I walk inside to find Tony on the couch, while Ashley was naked and riding him. At that moment, it was like my brain had shut off all emotions inside my head. I felt no anger, no sadness, no hatred, no heartbreak. Nothing. I was numb. I stood there for about 10 seconds before they noticed me. Ashley freaked out, while Tony grabbed his shirt and ran off. Ashley kept crying and saying that it was not what it seemed. That it was a mistake, and that she's sorry. I simply packed my stuff and left the apartment. The only thing I said to Ashley was an emotionless goodbye before leaving. I called my dad and told him what happened. I also asked if I could stay with him for a bit and he let me move into his house. I'll keep you updated on anything in the future. As of now, it has been 5 days since that event and I still feel nothing. No emotions, just numb. Am I broken? Story 3. Now female 33 telling her story. Karma does happen. I started dating my ex-husband at 18. Married at 21. Divorced by 25. We both were in the military and decided to get married before I went on my second deployment. He got out and moved back home, which was a couple states from where we were stationed. Our first deployment, we deployed together, however we were in separate areas and didn't see each other much. Being a female Marine, we don't get the best rep and I was surrounded by men. Could have easily cheated. Didn't. However, I found out later after the divorce, his friends told me he was cheating on deployment at around that time as well. A lot of cheating happened that I didn't know about. He came back and I stayed deployed another 5.5 months. One of the guys told him I had cheated on him with another guy. It wasn't true. When I got back, we broke up for a bit. I did sleep with another guy on that breakup. Got back to him, he wanted to try again. I agreed since I thought, oh well, he was faithful and this amazing guy. Young and naive. After we got back together, he proposed, we got married, moved off base. Brings me to my second deployment. I was faithful to him completely. Again, surrounded by men. Then an incident happened. Got an email, couldn't use cell phones, from my mom telling me to call me. Sent multiple emails. Went up where I could use the phone. Called my mom. Found out my brother, for years younger than me, passed away. I have some PTSD from high emotional stress. Ended up crying and being very distraught. Who do I call next? My husband, and guess what? Another woman answers. She asks who I am and what I want with her BF. I hang up. Break down. So within 20 minutes I find out my brother passed and my husband might as well be dead to me. Had to have 3 male Marines stop me from hurting myself from PTSD. Not fun. On deployments, we don't get breaks in my job. My CO gave me a mental health day which ended up only being the morning. Still had to work. Long story short, I wrote a long message basically stating our marriage was over. Started dating another Marine who was single. Well, when we got back, my husband showed up with flowers and whatnot. My mom told me to give him a chance because he came back to live with her to help with the funeral and my brothers, 2 younger. I mistakenly gave in and ended my relationship since I was getting out anyway and we both knew it was short term. Told my husband the truth and was completely transparent. Next step, marriage counseling. I also went to individual counseling for my PTSD. The marriage counselor at around 6 months in told me how he has no remorse and just thinks he was pressuring me to trust him again. 2 years after getting out, finally trusting him. Came home early from school. Walked in on him and the girl who was lesbian. His reasoning? Because I didn't give him enough of my time. I was working and going to school full-time, while he just went to school part-time. Cue divorce. He married the girl who was the one who answered the phone. He is 400 pounds and bald now. He never got to his dream career. Just found out they recently divorced through a mutual friend. Me, I weigh the same as I did back then. Have my dream career, make 6 figures, and in a happy relationship with my BF. However, took me a long time of therapy and not dating anyone before I was ready to commit again. For 2 years I focused on myself completely and was able to feel confident and secure. My insecurities still happen, but my BF makes it where I have no reason to feel that way.